What's the most important thing about that steak you're going to grill? Is it the store that it came from? Is it what the cow ate? Or is it actually more important where on the cow your steak came from? So let's get to the meat of the matter today and finally decide what is the best steak for grilling this summer today on the Carefree Cooks Code. I'm Chef Todd Moore, and this is the Carefree Cooks Code, every Tuesday live at noon Eastern. Here's our challenge. How can home cooks cook freely with creativity, confidence, and pride while ignoring recipes and still impressing themselves and others with what they cook? Well, the answer is found in becoming empowered with how cooking works, using dependable and repeatable methods of cooking that work for any ingredient, for any diet, and any desire, just like chefs do. And we'll know we've cracked it when everyone sees cooking as an exciting and rewarding way to improve their relationships, their lifestyles, and their health through better food and cooking. This is the Carefree Cooks Code. Yeah, welcome back to the Carefree Cooks Code, everyone. Yay. We're live every Tuesday at noon Eastern. And you know what? No matter what your question is, where to find a recent video, what my live schedule is, something about your web cooking classes membership, well, it's all found in our brand new self-service automated help center. You don't have to wait for an answer when you get it right away at webcookingclasses.com/help. Take advantage of that for sure. And you know, it was 14 weeks ago now? I promised you 14 weeks ago that we would all get through this together. And that promise stands today. From what I'm seeing, we are nowhere near the end of this. Nowhere near the end. So I'm not going anywhere either. I had planned to take July off. Not going to do that. Then I was thinking about taking August off. No, I'm not going to do that. I have got to help everyone find their own cooking journey, because really cooking your own food at home, it has become very, very important lately, and I remain committed to doing this live schedule here because we're all carefree cooks. We create our own recipes. We bring our friends and family together. We learn every time we cook, creating our own cooking style because we practice pro methods and we love our cooking. Look, I don't know about you, but I so look forward to Tuesdays because of these 30 minutes that we get to spend together. And thank you so much for all your kind comments, all the encouragement that I get during the week. That, you know, when I see Chef Todd, I never did this before, and now I have the courage to do that. Thank you. I want to find more people, you know? We need to make more Carefree Cooks because the impact is so dramatic. So don't worry, I'm not retiring anytime soon. I'm going on 12, 13 years of doing this, have not slowed up. Actually, getting faster and faster. All right, before I go on anymore, I've got a what am I for you today in the comments section below. Please tell me what am I. Our topic is grilling today, so that's a hint. Let me see if I can make this bigger for you. Can you see that? They're long, pointy kind of things. You got it? Well, it might be a hard one. It goes goes with grilling. It's the what am I for today. Hey everybody, thank you so much for all your birthday wishes this past week. All the dishes that you cooked for me, I loved it. Honestly, I can't say that it really mattered what you decided to cook for me. I wasn't judging anything. Whatever you did cook and post in our Carefree Cooks community warmed my heart. Really, it was just the fact that you did cook. And that you were brave enough to post it. You had confidence. You cooked with some creativity, some individualism, and those were the best gifts that I got last Wednesday. Thank you so much. And you know, I love my birthday so much because it's July 15th. It's the bullseye of the summer, I always say. And we all know summer cooking is cool when you do it right, you know. And the cooking method most associated with summer cooking is grilling. Now, I've covered the 11 steps in grilling methods before. You can look back at facebook.com/chef.todd.more/videos and find that video there. But today it's about what to grill. So let me ask you this. Do you remember the steakhouse? Did you have a favorite steakhouse? I grew up in New York on Long Island. We had Beefsteak Charlie's. It was like a northeastern. You've got ground round, and then you've got some upscale ones, right? So can you remember that far back? Can you remember back when? Are you old enough to remember when you would go to a restaurant, sit down, and be served food? You can tell your kids and grandkids about it. But look, I remember, speaking of the steakhouse, I remember the last time that the entire board of directors of Moore Publishing Incorporated, when we had our quarterly meeting at the end of 2019, the entire board of directors went to this really nice restaurant in downtown Baltimore, and the entire board of directors sat down at a table for two. Yeah, my huge corporation has two members on the board. It's me and Heather. So we decided to go to the Prime Rib Steakhouse here in Baltimore. And, I got to tell you, I have never been a fan of the steakhouse concept. You know, the steakhouse where you have to place your order for everything separately. You know, you get a small village's worth of asparagus for like $15 on the side. You know, your baked potato is the size of a boulder and it costs you $22. I've never really liked the concept. But anyway, I remember thinking at the time that I hadn't had a good steak in a while. And Heather and I, we eat mostly fin fish and shellfish and crustaceans. We eat mostly seafood, but it had been months since I had a really good steak, and since this is a really good steakhouse, I ordered a steak, and oh my God, it was so good. I mean, a steak really done well. My taste buds were just dazzling with every bite with that Crocodile Dundee sized steak knife they give you. You know, the steakhouse, they always give you this gigantic knife, but it just like fell through the steak. The steak was that tender. And I kept thinking that everything that goes into a steak like this, everything that makes a steak this good, there's a lot that goes into it. First, the Prime Rib, they're a steakhouse. You know, they have a lot of experience grilling steaks. They've got a method that works. They grill steaks over and over again every day. They have practiced the method, and that's what I always try and bring to you, is repeatable methods. And I also know that the Prime Rib has a really friggin' hot grill back there, right? Something way hotter than I will ever get in my home or in my backyard. They're getting the best steaks from the best ranches. They season it correctly. They age it lovingly. They serve it perfectly. They're a steakhouse. So I sat there in this vegetarian's nightmare, you know, my eyes rolling back in my head, being grateful for everything that it takes to put a great steak on a plate, especially in the summer. But, you know, with every bite, because I'm a culinary educator, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about how can I get you to this point? How can I get us all closer and closer to this steakhouse that I don't know that it exists anymore? But because, look, I want you to remember that this summer could be the time that you're able to grill the perfect steak and really be proud of you. Because every summer, this question comes at me like a tidal wave on the beach, and it's over and over again. It is, Chef Todd, what's the best steak to grill? You know, and it's funny, nobody ever asks me, Chef Todd, what's the best squash to roast in the fall? I don't care. They never ask me, Chef Todd, what's the best fruit to make into jam in the spring? Or what's the best root vegetable to braise in winter? Nobody asks me these things. But once the outdoor cooking season begins and everybody starts to think that if they just had that one amazing steak, the perfect, the exotic, the marinated, aged, tenderized, milk-fed, grass-raised, non-GMO, free-range, gluten-free, larded and barded, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and humanely treated steak, then their grilling is instantly great, you know? But look, all those multisyllabic words, all I'm really saying is that it's important that you examine the source of your food, deciding on what's important to you. So look, no matter the source, where your cow comes from, what it ate, and how it was treated, where your steak came from on the cow can mean great grilling or chewy charcoal, you know? So today, we're going to talk about the cuts of steak on a cow. And this is a topic that I spend 3 full days in culinary school on. But I've got less than 20 minutes here to bring it home. So here we go. Beef from a cow is edible muscle tissue. Fat, connective tissue, and bones comes down to it. But the muscle tissue, which is our food, it's 72% water, 20% protein, about 7% fat, and 1% mineral. But a single muscle on an animal is composed usually of many bundles of muscles with fibers holding them together by connective tissue. There are multiple muscle strands, and the size of these bundles forms the grain and texture of the meat. That's the first important concept. The size of the muscle bundle forms the structure, the grain and texture of the meat. So as the cow fattens, some of the water in this muscle structure, some of the proteins are replaced by fat. You get older, things get replaced by fat. But in a cow, this appears as marbling, and this is a good thing. So the older the animal, the more marbling you're going to get, given the same diet and everything else the same. The older the animal, the more marbling as the stuff turns to fat. But this connective tissue that binds these muscle cells into bundles, it's made up of one of two things. And it's either composed of collagen or elastin. Now, this is important, and I've done this in live classes before. The collagen is the part that breaks down into gelatin and water when it's cooked under moist heat. Any kind of steam, any kind of moisture, and this stuff will cook away. Now, elastin, on the other hand, this is not going to break down under normal cooking conditions, and it's got to be removed before cooking, so this means your knife skills. And this is the first way that you make a tender steak or a chewy steak on the grill, by picking a cut that has more elastin than collagen, okay? Next big concept, and I'm going to explain it in a minute. Because our goal in cooking meats is to coagulate the proteins, see it stiffen and shrink, to break down these connective tissues so they do tenderize, and sometimes it can be done under direct heat on the grill. Other times you need moisture and acid, like in braising. But what we really love to do on the grill is caramelize those residual sugars, right? Give it that brown color and the sweet flavor, those cross-matched grill marks, right? That's what you're trying to do. So which cut of steak you choose really has a huge impact on whether you're a great griller or not. You know, the heat is going to be the heat. So let's talk about the way a cow is processed, right? This is culinary school stuff. This is 3 days that you're going to get in 15 more minutes or so. So we take a steer, right? We first cut it in half down the backbone. And then it's cut between the 12th and 13th ribs. So you have 4 quarters, F-O-U-R. You have number 4 quarters of the cow. And there are 2 fore quarters, meaning the front, 2 fore quarters, and 2 hind quarters, meaning the back. Okay, so you got this. You, of course, you're not buying a quarter cow from the butcher or the grocery store. You're not wheeling out of there with 500 pounds of meat and bone like Fred Flintstone gets put on his car, right? A processor will take those 4 quarters and he will create what's called primal cuts of beef. And from the 4 quarter of the primal cut of beef, you get chuck, shank, brisket, rib, and short plate. And then from the 2 hind quarter pieces you have, you get short loin, sirloin, flank, and round. But you're still not probably going to go to the store and ask them for these cuts, right? These primal cuts at your grocery store or farmer's market, because again, your car would tip over like Fred Flintstone, right? He never learned, Fred. He kept going to that same restaurant and ordering that same dish. He wrecked his car every time. He never learned. I never understand that. But look, a butcher, from those primal cuts of beef, he will create what's called fabricated cuts. And this is where you get your steaks, your chops, your roasts, the things that wind up in plastic and styrofoam at your grocery store. But that still doesn't answer the question of what is the best steak for grilling. This only gives you some background into the muscle composition. So, okay, like I said, this is a 15-hour course at school. So I'm going to get to the meat of the matter here. Here's a few new ideas for you to graze upon. Think about this. The more the muscle moves, the tougher the meat. Okay? The more marbling you see, the older the cow will have been. And the older the cow, the tougher the meat. But many people say the more flavorful the meat also. And the longer the muscle, the tougher the steak. So here's how we put this idea to work. A cow walks on 4 legs, right? So the rule of thumb here is the more the muscle moves, the tougher the meat. And that's why chuck is ground into hamburgers. I do not suggest grilling a chuck steak. You would braise it, or you might even roast it. But chuck is usually ground into hamburgers because think about how much that muscle moves on the cow. So let's think about those front legs while we're at it. They do a lot of work. Those skinny little legs hold up a whole lot of weight. They're skinny, they got all the tendons, they've got all that connective tissue, and the muscle fibers are long, and this is why you don't hear about a great grilled beef shank. These things are usually braised. All right, so let's think about the rear end of the cow now. That rump, that booty, that cow rump, it holds up a lot of weight too, right? And steaks from the round, they're good choices. They're not good choices for quick, intense cooking like saute or grilling. They are better for longer, lower, slower bones. So either end of the cow, chuck, shank, round, that kind of thing, these are the muscles that move the most. These are the ones that are going to be the toughest. These are the ones that call for longer, lower, slower, with acid cooking process. So that leaves the middle of the cow now, the middle top and the middle bottom. So let's start at the bottom. The short plate and the flank are abdominal cuts. Okay, they're along the bottom of the cow. And the abdomen of the cow is very, very lean. There's less marbling going on there because the cow doesn't store its fat the way I do, or any middle-aged guy, you know, like around the waist. There's less fat in the abdomen cuts, less marbling, but there's a lot more connective tissue because if you think about your abdomen, your abs, they're tough, right? So these cuts are where you're going to find a lot more elastin than collagen. And if you've ever cleaned a flank steak with your boning knife, you remember that shiny silver skin elastin that runs along. It wraps around the entire muscle and runs the length of it. It doesn't cook away, and you don't digest it very well. So your knife skills are the thing that solves that problem. And that's what I used to have my students in culinary school do, clean flank steaks all day long. It was my favorite cut because if you can cut that horizontal cut, getting rid of that silver skin, you're doing really well with your knife. So once you remove the connective tissue, these can be really tender cuts of meat. It's that connective tissue that makes it really chewy. So this is why the flank steak could be such a really tender cut if you have nice knife skills, and it's a cheaper cut too. Then you really add some tenderness to it when you cut across the grain. When you're slicing it, it's think about those muscle fibers again, those bundles, right? Like a whole bunch of rubber bands squished together, or straws, imagine, right? And if you cut across those bundles, or spaghetti, imagine I'm holding spaghetti. You cut across those, you get these little tiny muscle fibers, right? Like cutting across rubber bands or spaghetti. And this is where it becomes a much more tender steak because of the knife skills that you had. And flank is the primal cut that you'll find a bavette steak good steak for grilling. A flat iron steak, some marinade, maybe some acidic marinade to tenderize it. That's a good one for the grill. Some of these are really good because when you clean them and slice them, they're really tender. They might use a little marinating help or dry rub help as well. They're really good steaks to again, add an acid to because that helps to break down the connective tissue. And you might notice that we really don't grill short ribs or beef ribs. You know, you might grill mark them after you've smoked them, poached them, steamed them, braised them, or roasted them, right? So ribs that have a lot of that elastin, a lot of that connective tissue, a lot of that very rubbery, think of pork ribs and baby back ribs where you can strip that one piece of fat right off the bottom of it, right? The best way to get rid of that, I used to simmer my ribs in beer. Apple cider vinegar and beer before I would then grill them because I cook away the connective tissues, right? But anything from the short plate, generally very fatty, it has a little bit too much connective tissue to put right on the grill. It's a combination cooking method. All right, so that leaves the top middle of the cow. There we go. These are the muscles that the cow uses least. And these are your best steaks for grilling right here. Cuts from the rib, from the short loin, from the sirloin are the most tender. They're usually the most marbled. They usually have the least connective tissue on the animal. So these are also the cuts that are sliced into steaks across the muscle fiber and into usable portion. So a T-bone steak, think about a T-bone. A T-bone is a cross section of the sirloin. A T-bone includes the strip steak and a piece of the tenderloin. And this is where sirloin steaks come from. This is where ribeye steaks come from. This is your filet mignon, your beef tenderloin, which is a long muscle along the back of the cow that you then slice across to get across the grain. This is why these things are so tender. This is the most tender muscle that runs along the spine of the cow from the sirloin cut. But it's also the most expensive, right? So let me really drive this point home and do something silly that I do in culinary school. Let's imagine that the cow walked on 2 legs instead of 4. Cow walks upright, just like you. Evolution gone wild. Mad, I tell you. And the cow is now a hind leg walker, like Animal Farm, you know? So if a cow walked on its back legs, well, then the tenderloin would be the worst cut on the animal. This would be the chewiest cut on the animal because the spine would have to support all the weight of the cow, the 1,000 or 2,000 pounds on these back 2 legs. And I'm saying that the chuck and the brisket, what used to be some of the chewiest, would now be some of the most tender cuts on my mutant cow that walks on 2 legs because they're not going to use their shoulders and their muscles much. You know, with those hooves, they're not going to be able to drink coffee or write, you know, or play sports or anything like that. They're pretty useless, those arms. So it's going to be a really tender cut. So if a cow walked on 2 legs, it would change everything about it. And this is the way I want you to think about the best steak for grilling for you. Think about where it comes from on the cow. So until pigs fly, which would make pork tenderloin very tough and chewy, right? Or until chickens fly, which would make the very tender chicken breast now taste more like duck meat. Chicken breast would be dark meat if chickens flew. Well, until those things happen, cows are going to keep walking on 4 legs. And where the muscles move the most, those are the worst cuts of meat for grilling. That's the basic idea. The muscle that moves the most is the worst cut for grilling. The muscles that move the least from the middle back of the cow, those are the ones that you should look for. So when you focus on where on the cow your steak comes from, not where your steak comes from. Yes, your steak comes from a cow, but where on the cow. And if you want the best steaks for grilling, then focus on the cut of the steak. From there, we can all start talking about dry rubs and marinades. injections and brining, larding, barding, all other kinds of great methods that you can turn just about any steak into a really, really good steak to cook. But it always starts with picking the right steak for the right method. If you do that, you'll be fine. Like all of cooking, the right item for the right cooking method is what really makes it come out good. Hey, let's go to the Carefree Cooks collection. These are the things that I have just kind of randomly pulled out of our Carefree Cooks community because they stopped me when I was scrolling. Scroll. Oh, wow, that's cool. And most of them are going to have to do with grilling today, I'm sure. Maureen is the first one. She used her knife skills to flatten a chicken and then throw it on the barbecue grill, right? And I can tell, what does she say? She used her thermometer, is what she's saying. And I could tell that she wasn't guessing and gashing, right? She is quantifying the results of her grilling. Very, very smart thing to do. Lynn used a combination cooking method for her short ribs, just like I was talking about. Really tough to take ribs and only put them on the grill because it doesn't break down any of that chewiness. They got to be braised or steamed or poached first and then grilled to caramelize or grill mark. But anyway, she used a pressure cooker. Linda used a pressure cooker and then put them on the grill to caramelize, give them some color. Look, we don't have to just talk about animal proteins today, right? Rachel here is making flatbread and she put it on the grill. How amazing, right? Those really cool looking grill marks on your bread. That's really sharp. Marshall, he's got his crosshatch down. He knows how to control that grill temperature, right? Really nice looking marks on pork chops. He said they were, but again, grilling isn't just for protein because I love this. This is what he paired with the grilled pork chops, which is grilled pineapple. Think about all the other stuff that's non-animal that you can use this method on because it caramelizes sugars so well. Grilled peaches, grilled pineapple, grilled portobello, grilled tofu, it's not just about animal proteins when it comes to the method of grilling for sure. Nicely done, everyone. Really nicely done this week. Where are we? Oh, excuse me, the what am I? I mentioned it a few times today. These are long needles. They're hollow needles. And what you do is you take this long hollow needle and you insert it into some kind of fat, beef fat or duck fat or something like that, and then you insert it into beef and you pull it out, you leave the fat in there. It's called a larding needle. Larding an item is the way you inject fat into it. It's another way to take a not so good cut of beef and turn it into something decent, but it's a fancy French thing that we usually don't do. Hey, look, if you know someone who could really put a fire under their grilling skills by choosing the right cut of beef for grilling, then go ahead and like this video. Please share it with them. Oh, and also, here it is, my latest free online web class answers the question coming at me from all angles, which is, how do you know what foods go together? So I created Food Matchmaker, the 5 steps to choosing the perfect combination of flavors in your cooking. And actually, this class was supposed to end last weekend. That was going to be it. I wasn't going to tell you about it anymore, but there has been such clamor to get into this class, and I heard from people that said that they were having a lot of trouble registering. I don't know if classes were full or not, but because people couldn't register, I decided to extend the run of this class. If you want to start watching how to match your cooking item to the food, just like we were talking about today, but going deeper, knowing which aromatic vegetables to use, what kind of sauce to prepare, how to use herbs and spices to complement the dish, things like that. It's a good class. This free class, by the way, is for you. Go to webcookingclasses.com/match. Hey, everybody. Great time being with you again today. It's Chef Todd Moore reminding you that there's a method to your grilling success. Bye, everyone.